Welcome to A Homestead in the West. I'm Emilie and I live in West Wales. After 3 years of turning this piece of land into a home, the foundations are finally in place, and it feels like I can start living the life I've been dreaming of, building a sustainable homestead. In this next chapter, I'll be learning to live off the land, growing and preserving my own food, and cooking wholesome meals from scratch, using simple local ingredients and what grows here in West Wales, paying attention to what we eat, how it's made, and where it comes from. Along the way, I'll also be exploring my other passions, from beekeeping, flower farming, willow-weaving, sewing, and so much more. My dream is to one day open a small farm stand to share the things I grow and make here, and to host willow-weaving workshops and retreats here on the land too. I'm so glad you're here to join me for this next chapter, as I continue building a homestead in the West. So after finishing our tiny house and having a kitchen for the first time in 3 years, one of the first things I wanted to focus on was food and really go back to basics and learn to cook from scratch. So I thought I'd start with some of my favourite pantry staples first, and at the top of my list is bread. So now we're going to go out and get some of my ingredients ready to bake my first loaf. So today I'm visiting a local watermill called Emilie, one of the last working watermills in Wales, still producing traditional stone ground flour. Tucked away in a quiet corner of West Wales, Emilie feels like a living piece of Welsh heritage. They've been grinding flour here since the early 1640s. We met Emma, a very proud second-generation miller who now runs Emilie, having taken over from her father Michael. Emma kindly gave us a tour and showed us how everything still works just as it did centuries ago. The water from the mill comes from the mill pond just behind the building, fed by a stream that runs through the valley. When the sluice gates open, the weight of the water turns the great mill wheel that power drives the gears inside. When Emma's family bought the mill, the pond had been filled in and dry for nearly 30 years, so they worked hard to restore it and bring the mill back to working order. Once the cogs are turning, they hoist up a sack of wheat, grown on a nearby farm, ready to be milled. Emma pours the wheat into the hopper, where it's slowly fed between the millstones below. The stones grind the grain gently, producing fresh, soft flour that falls down to be collected, sieved, and then finally bagged by hand. I bought a few bags for our pantry, along with some of their oats and seeded mix. It was so amazing to see this century-old process still alive today, and how it connects people, place and food. And it feels really special to start my first bake with flour made right here in West Wales at Emilie. Back home, I couldn't wait to start baking using the flour I'd bought from Emilie. As we don't have an oven in our cabin, I'm going to be baking my loaf of bread outside in my Dutch oven over the fire. I'm using a simple no-knead recipe which needs 2 teaspoons of yeast, 360 ml of warm water. The warmth of the water helps wake up the yeast, bringing it back to life after it's been resting dry in a packet and helping it to rise. 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 3 cups of bread flour. I'm using wholemeal flour from the mill. It's made from the entire grain, so nothing is taken away. This means all the fibre, flavour and nutrients are still there, giving the bread that lovely nutty taste and hearty texture. It feels good knowing exactly where it's come from, grown and milled just a few miles away and full of all the goodness that nature intended. Combine your dry ingredients together. This helps spread everything evenly before adding your water and yeast. The salt brings out the flavour and the sugar helps feed the yeast once it starts to rise. Then it's time to add in the warm water and yeast. This is the moment when the yeast starts to come to life, feeding on the flour and sugar to really help the dough rise. As this is a no-knead recipe, all you need to do is combine all the ingredients, and as it mixes in, you can almost feel the dough beginning to come alive again, soft, sticky and full of potential. Once combined, cover your mixture with a cloth or cling film to hold in the heat and keep it somewhere warm for 3 hours to let it prove. For us, our sauna area, even when it's not on, is the warmest spot on our land, so I thought this would be the perfect spot to leave it. As the dough rested, I headed outside to chop some wood. All the wood I'm using today has been gathered from our own land, so it feels really special to use it for baking my loaf of bread today. Today I'm cooking with my new Dutch oven. For Christmas, my husband John surprised me with this beautiful cast iron pot and tripod stand, after I told him I wanted to learn to cook over the fire. I was so excited to use it today for the first time to bake my very first loaf of bread. I lit the fire and left it to burn. You need to wait for the wood to burn down and turn into glowing coals before we can bake with it, as if you do it when the fire is still high, it will burn the bread. So while we waited, I decided to make some butter, which will go perfect with our freshly baked bread. For the butter, I'm using a hand churner and some fresh double cream. Before churning, I leave my cream out at room temperature for about 2 hours. It takes the chill off and helps it thicken more easily once you start turning. The churner itself is simple, just a glass jar with paddles inside that turn as you crank the handle. As the cream is agitated, it slowly thickens, first becoming whipped cream, then separating into butter and buttermilk. It takes around 15 minutes, so you need a bit of patience and some steady turning, but I do love that part. You can feel the moment it starts to change, getting heavier as the butter begins to form. These hand churners were once found in most farm kitchens. No electricity, no fuss, just time and rhythm, and there's something really satisfying about making butter this way, watching it go from cream to gold and knowing exactly what's in it. Stage 1, it starts to thicken. Stage 2, you have whipped cream. And stage 3, you start to see yellow clumps of butter start to separate. Once the butter's formed, the first step is to pour off the liquid, and this is called buttermilk. It's perfect for using in pancakes, scones, or cake mixtures, so I'm going to keep this aside for another recipe. Next, I tip the butter into a bowl of cold water. The cold helps firm up the butter, and this is when you need to gently squeeze and rinse it to remove any remaining buttermilk. This will help your butter last longer and give it a lovely clean taste. Once it's rinsed, it's ready to be moulded into shape. You can pat it by hand or press it into a small dish or butter mould. Handmade butter like this will keep in the fridge for about a week or a little longer if you add salt to it. You can also freeze it if you'd like to make it in bigger batches. Over Christmas by me, double cream is always on sale and heavily reduced, so I plan to stock up this winter and make a few batches I can freeze so I can have a supply of butter to last into the new year. Now the butter was made, it was time to check on my fire. While the fire was still burning, I sprinkled a little flour over my board to stop the dough from sticking. I gently folded it into shape, then covered it lightly and left it by the fire for its final proof, close enough to the warmth of the flames to help it rise one last time. Next, I hung the Dutch oven over the fire to preheat it before adding the dough. It's important to get your pot nice and hot, that way when the dough goes in, it gets an instant burst of heat. This helps the bread rise quickly and form a beautiful golden crust. My dough was now warm to the touch, and I could see it had risen nicely by the fireside. With the pot now preheated, I lined it with a piece of baking paper to stop the dough from sticking to the cast iron. Now the flames had died down, I spread out the fire, leaving a bed of beautiful glowing coals, perfect for baking with. I placed the Dutch oven over the coals and added a few more on top of the lid to help spread the heat out evenly and bake the loaf all the way through. As the sun set, we were left with only the glow of the coals quietly baking our loaf in the fading light. There was something quite magical about that moment. The warmth of the fire, the stillness of the evening, and the promise of fresh bread waiting for us come morning. So this is my first loaf of bread that I baked yesterday in my Dutch oven. It was such a big trial and error learning to cook over the fire because it's really hard to gauge what temperature you're cooking at. So I'm just glad that it's not black and completely burnt. One mistake I can see that I've made is it's quite flat. It hasn't risen very well. And I guess the sauna maybe wasn't as hot as I thought it would be. To me, I always think it's the warmest place on the land, but it's definitely not warm enough to prove bread. So that's something to try differently next time, but I'm really excited to cut into it and give it a try. Imagine if it's raw inside. Okay. Oh, it's quite tough. I really hope it's not like cement. Okay, I wasn't expecting it to be so hard to cut. But it's my first attempt, so, oh, that's a lot easier actually. That's really good. You can really taste the salt in it. So one thing I wasn't expecting to taste was a slight smoky flavour on the bread. Because I cooked it in the Dutch oven, I wasn't expecting that flavour to seep in, but it is actually delicious, especially with my homemade butter. And that is the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching. My next episode will be celebrating Christmas. We've lived in a touring caravan for the last 3 years, so this will be our first Christmas holiday actually in the cabin, which we're really excited for. So I will see you on the next one.